calories down in your diet. And you really do need to, when you cut calories down, you're going to be nutrient deficient. If you don't, the first place to start on any weight loss program is supplementation. I'm talking to you from the platform of a doctor now, okay? Not just a weight loss experienced person, but I'm telling you this, really, it's important. You need to have, again, I can get on the platform about this, you need to have a good quality multivitamin, multi-mineral to replace and supplement what you're not getting because you're getting less calories, okay? And fish oil. This is something in the literature over and over and over. One of the issues is inflammation, chronic inflammation, and fish oils, omega-3s especially, reduce inflammation. This is a big deal. Now, I told you about the statistics. Now, here's secret number 2. I want you to take a look back in the early 80s. The Centers for Disease Control started keeping records. They started keeping every census. They would start to record statistics. And then for the first time in the early 80s, they started recording the percent of people in each state that were obese. Now, what I want you to take a look at here is I want you to notice in the white, there's about 2/3 of the states that didn't even report, no data. They didn't even feel it was significant in 1985. It started in the early 80s. By 1985, 2/3 of states still didn't even feel it was significant enough. They didn't even report the data. In the light blue here, you're seeing less than 10% of the adult population was considered obese. In the darker blue, you're seeing 10 to 15% that were considered obese. Now, I want you to take a look at this. This is 1985. Now, let's go up 15 years. I'm going to cut to the chase. In a longer talk, I can go through every 5 years at a time. But let's look 15 years down the road in the year 2000. What I want you to look at now, every state is reporting obesity. Every single state. Every single state is reporting obesity. Only one is less than 10%. About half the states are now 15 to 20%, and the other half are 20 to 25%. That's 2000. Now, let's look 5 years, 2010, 10 years later. Now look at this. For the first time now, you're seeing 1/4 of the United States, 13 states, are now reporting obesity rates of over 30%. Folks, I'm telling you, we have an epidemic. Now, 2 things I want you to think about. What do you think happened in the early 80s? You have to stop and think. There's a trend that goes like this. Obesity, there's a trend that goes like this in diabetes. They parallel each other. You think there's a correlation? In science, we look at that and we say there's a definite distinct correlation. Okay? So we take a look at this. Now I want you to stop and think about, what do you think happened in the early 80s? Well, I'll tell you one thing. Our government told us a big fat lie. And we now know that that's a big fat lie. They said, if you're fat, you need to quit eating fat, and because fat makes you fat. They said, if your cholesterol is real high, you got to quit eating foods that have cholesterol. Well, your body creates cholesterol. That's not the problem. Okay? We know that that's not the answer. This was the story that we were told. I'm telling you, numbers and statistics don't lie. We're looking at, this plan didn't work. We got to just face the music. This plan didn't work. When we talk about fat makes fat, so you need to have fat in your diet. If you have a no-fat diet, you're going to be battling your weight forever, okay? Because your body's craving, it needs fat. It lines the nerves and travel from your brain up to your whole body, okay? The second thing is that we converted from sugar to high fructose corn syrup. It's called GMO, okay? Genetically modified foods. Okay? That's a real problem. And sugars and everything. Now, when you say, let's take the fat out, these 2 things go together. They say, well, let's take the fat out of your food. Now, you know, you take fat out of foods when you get things that normally have fat in it. You take the fat out, you know what it starts to taste like? Cardboard. Okay, it's tasteless. So what do they do to get a taste again? They put sugar in it. Okay, you see how these 2 things work together? And the third thing is, the PC was invented. This is the facts. And what happened in the early 80s that made changes in the way we look at things and how we live our lives today. What's that have to do with anything? It has everything, because knowledge becomes power, but it only becomes power when you use the knowledge, right? And because we become much more sedentary in our lifestyle, once the PC was invented, guess what? Okay? This is a big deal. So you can't deny the correlation. So here's what it comes down to. Don't be afraid to eat fat, but eat it in moderation. If you're eating foods like margarine that have trans fat in it, you need to eat butter. I mean, again, I could go over this, we could talk about this. This could be a talk in and of itself. What are the good fats? Olive oil, absolutely, yes. Good omega-3 fats. Stop eating artificial sweeteners, okay? How many of you have been told that you probably need to get off your Cokes and drink Diet Cokes, and that's the solution, right? No calories. Less calories is better. Well, let me tell you, how many of you have ever heard of Pavlov? I want to share with you why Diet Cokes make you fat. Fact. This isn't my opinion. This is throughout the medical literature. Jenny, am I wrong? Okay, very good friend of mine, healthcare professional. Diet drinks and artificial sweeteners make you fat. Lower calories, but here's the problem. If you remember Pavlov, did a study. What he did is he looked at dogs, and he noticed that when dogs have food, that before they eat, they salivate. They create a lot of saliva out of their mouth. So what he did is he said, let's do an experiment. Let's put a chain around the dogs. Let's show the dog their food, and let's see what happens. So he showed them their food before they could eat, and he watched how they salivate before they eat. And then he'd take them and release them and let them eat. Then he said, let's show them their food and let's ring a bell and let's see what happens. And they would salivate, and then he'd feed them. Then he said, let's just ring the bell and let's not show them the food and let's see what happens. They'd salivate. The same amount. So what he learned was the sight and the thought of food made the dog create a physiological effect to salivate, right? Now think about this. When you have a Coke and it's loaded with 10 teaspoons of sugar in a 12-ounce can of Coke, equivalent, right? You're getting sugar in your body. Your body creates a large volume of insulin, and it causes insulin shock, and your blood sugar goes real high at first, but then the insulin hits and your blood sugar goes way down, and you have that crash. Right? Ever experienced that? Yeah. Who's ever overeaten, like at Thanksgiving or something? Right? You know what I'm talking about? You overeat and you crash. That's what we're talking about. All right? But here's what, remember Pavlov? When you have sugar in your diet, like we've been trained and educated since the early 80s to see, that what happens is you start to have this physiological change occur. But when you take the sugar away, the thought and the sight of something that has sugar in it does exactly the same thing. It causes a large barrage of insulin, and you have that crash, but no sugar. That leads to what's called insulin intolerance, insulin resistance. This is the beginning, the fast lane on how to get into, to become diabetic. Okay? So obesity and diabetes are both treatable, preventable, and they're reversible. We know this to be true. So secret number 3, here's what it comes down to. You've heard this, burn more calories than you eat, right? That's not the way it works. It's really not the way it works, okay? So first off, let's define what calories are. Calories are those little tiny creatures that live in your closet, and you sew up your clothes a little bit tighter every night. Okay, that's not what calories really are. But here's what calories really are, is that they're not all the same. Now, let me make my point. If you eat at McDonald's, you have Big Mac fries and shake, you know how many calories that is? 50 calories, mind you, about 1,500 calories, okay? Now let's take a look at, if you had 1,500 calories of fruits and vegetables, you know what that would look like? That's what it would look like, okay? So calories are not the same, so the amount of calories, if you're calorie counting, you think that's the solution. We learned a long time ago that that's not the solution. Okay? Because all calories aren't the same. So what you need to do is we recommend you eat more whole foods. And listen, if it comes out of a package, it's not whole. I don't care what the label says. Made from whole foods is not whole foods. If it comes from the grocery section, it's a whole food. If it's an extract, it's not whole anymore. It now becomes packaged and prepared. So stop eating fast food. Again, we can talk about this forever and ever and ever. Packaged means processed. Packaged means processed. How much time do I have? Okay, good. Okay, and you need to exercise regularly. Now, when I say exercise regularly, what I'm talking about is finding an exercise that you're going to enjoy to do, that you like to do. Now, So earlier, Bonnie said I'm the dancing chiropractor, and when I became divorced, one of the things I learned is that I needed to find an exercise thing because I wanted a younger, athletic woman in my life. I needed to find something to do. So I found an exercise I can live with that I enjoy. It's ballroom dancing. So find something you enjoy to do because you're going to be more likely to stick to it than if it's an exercise your doctor tells you to do, right? If I tell you to go join the gym and work out until you sweat 5 times a week, you're probably going to stick with that for about a week, maybe. Secret number 4, it's not just what you eat, but it's how and when you eat. Now let me make my point. Eat more slowly. It takes 30 minutes for the message to go from your stomach to your brain that you're full. If you eat really rapidly, really fast, your brain doesn't get the signal that you're full and you tend to overeat. Okay? Have you heard that one before? This is a problem. People gaining weight because they overeat. Portion control. Use more herbs and seasonings instead of sugar. We got to get off of sugar. It's a shock. If you've been living on sugar, it's a shock. I can't think of having coffee without sugar. Can you? I know it's a shock, but you can do it. And then know what your trigger foods are and avoid them. Now, everybody has a trigger food. Now, what's a trigger food? A trigger food is something that once you start eating it, you can't stop. That's it. Okay? Maybe that's an addiction. Maybe it's ice cream for you. Maybe it's chips. But you know the old saying, I bet you can't have just one. Right? If you whatever you think of, the first thought you know that's your trigger food. And for each one of us, it's probably something different. I can tell you for me, it's ice cream. I just don't buy it. Control your portion size. So here's how you do that. You've heard the story, control your portion size. Don't eat so much. Control, 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 the 3 C's, right? Don't let yourself get hungry. That's just how you learn portion control. You see, when you let yourself, when you skip meals, biggest mistake of all. Don't skip meals, don't starve yourself, because when your blood sugar gets down like this, you make bad choices. You come to the restaurant, instead of eating something healthy, you pick something that is going to taste good, because you need sugar. Okay? So when you skip meals, that's a real problem. Next thing is, I recommend highly that you start thinking about constantly feeding your body on a frequent basis. Eating frequent small meals is better than eating a really big meal, and the big meal should be in the middle of the day. Your largest meal definitely clearly needs to be in the middle of the day. And here, I'll tell you what, if you're so busy, you get home and you're starving, you violate all these rules here, right? You eat really late at night, like you get home at 9 o'clock at night, and you have this big, huge meal, you're going to make bad choices, and you're going to eat, your blood sugar's going to go high, you're going to have a crash, you're going to go to bed, you're going to sleep, and that sugar's going to turn to fat. This is just the way it works, guys, okay? And I'll tell you, if you're not eating breakfast, you're missing the most important meal. I don't care what you eat for breakfast, but eat something in the morning. A small quantity of something in the morning is going to carry you through the day and control your blood sugar and keep your appetite down better than that. Leptin. I'm going to cut this part of my talk short because I'm running over here. And by the way, this talk normally takes me an hour to do, so I'm going to cut this short. But leptin is a hormone in your body. About 10 years ago, we learned this hormone. It's a very important hormone. We call it the fat-burning hormone. And the important thing to know about this is that your body is designed to make weight loss painstakingly difficult. Okay? It goes back to genetics and the genes and how we were designed to be hunters and gatherers, and so we eat far apart typically, and then our genes are designed to store the fat during the hard times when we don't have food. So to lose the weight is really, we're just not designed to lose weight, we're designed to keep it on. So to burn fat, what you want to do with leptin is you want to have high levels of this hormone. I'm going to share with you how to do that. Have high levels of this hormone, and secondly is by having highly sensitive leptin receptors. The leptin receptors are the receptors that allow the hormone to actually work and do its thing for you. Okay? So when you diet, meaning when you go in caloric restriction, when you lower your calories in your diet, what that does, it lowers your levels of leptin in your bloodstream. Okay, that means that you're lowering metabolism, you're not absorbing fat, you're converting sugar to fat very quickly and very easily. So that's the problem. So leptin resistance, really, there's 2 different things we're talking about. To burn fat, you need to have high levels of this hormone, and you need to have a good sensitivity. So in order to have high leptin resistance, you need to have leptin resistance. If you have high body fat, and you maintain it over a period of time, your resistance is going to be very low. Okay? And also eating processed foods. So here's what it comes down to. Your best strategy is periodic overeating. I don't care what diet program you go on, but strategically having a fat day. I recommend it for all of my weight loss clients, and I'm telling you that I have found great success making this one change. Go on your caloric restriction. I don't care what you do on caloric restriction, because they all work, right? But one day a week, have a fat day. Just go ahead and eat what you want. Let it go. Don't be totally ridiculous, but eat the ice cream, eat the pizza, eat the things that you think that you shouldn't have. Have a few beers, 2. I should totally be careful on that one. Okay? Periodic overeating. It's strategic cheating. It's weekly. If you do that weekly by adding an extra 1,000 calories, again, you don't want to go crazy about it, but you do want to cheat a little bit. That's a secret. That's a strategy that really does work. The next is called reverse carbohydrate tapering. So when you have a cheat day, you want to slowly start to put the carbs back in, and truly carbs do cause you to become fat, okay? But after a cheat day, slowly add a small amount of carbs back into your diet each day, just a little bit more the next day, a little bit more the next day, and so forth and so on. This will really make a big difference. And so you can repair your leptin resistance, and here's what you do. Eat one ingredient foods at a time without processing preservatives or artificial sweeteners. So what would these kind of foods be? Be like a piece of fruit, okay? Not a fruit salad, one piece of fruit. It doesn't matter what piece of fruit it is. Have chicken, but not with a lot of other stuff along with it. Have chicken. Now you can have a meal that has 3 or 4 different single food items in it, but don't mix it all up, okay? So this is what we find really works best. And number 5, and I'm going to take this a couple of minutes to go over this, because this is the secret. This is what it really comes down to. Ultimately, we're discovering now that your genes really do create your destiny in life. But you're not, the genes that you're born with, you're going to have for your whole life, but it's the expression of those genes that cause cellular differentiation. For example, every single cell in your body has exactly the same number of genes in it as every other single cell. But what makes a heart and a lung and a liver and a muscle cell different from the others is that the way that they're expressed, those genes, certain genes are expressed. Okay, this is just basic genetics here. So, but what we've learned recently, and in the last few years, this has really become in the forefront of science. We've learned that 80% of the genetic material that you have in your genes is not made up of the genes, but they're actually what's called gene switches. So genes are either turned on or turned off. The good genes get turned on, the bad genes get turned off, and you're healthy. If it goes the other way, you become unhealthy. This is cutting edge science here, and I really want you to understand this. So we know that when a gene switches, they change the gene's work. That's called gene expression, and that's epigenetics. So if you haven't heard this term before, you're going to hear this, because this is good. Dr. Oz talks about it. Okay, Dr. Mark Hyman, some of my heroes. These doctors are some of the leaders. So here's what turns. These are the switches that turn our body, the good genes off and the bad genes on. We know that being exposed to toxins, pesticides, stress. Now stress is good, but chronic stress over time becomes very bad. So there's a line that you have to, when you cross that line, because exercise is stress, right? That's actually good for you. But if you over-exercise, it can be a problem, okay? Being in an unhealthy, stressful, and emotionally stressful world it can be healthy, because it makes you, rise to the occasion. But if you can't handle that over a long period of time, it becomes a problem. Your behavior. This is a mental concept here. Thinking bad thoughts. Thoughts become things. Diet. How you eat. These are the foods that you eat. These are all switches that turn our good genes off and our bad genes on. And these are the ones you want to avoid. Exercise. A little bit of exercise in moderation is going to be a good thing, but if you over-exercise, it's probably not going to be a good thing. And again, thoughts. So your good genes get turned off and your bad genes get turned on, you become unhealthy. And unhealthy people tend to put on weight. So you're going to stay the same person. You're going to have the same genes that you had before, but unfortunately, your genes are now going to start to cause cells to become cancerous, and you're going to develop cancer. You're going to develop diabetes, mental illness, and eventually diabetes. So to help your genes do their job, here's what we suggest that you do. Limit your exposure to toxins. Limit your exposure to toxins, including secondhand smoke, pesticides. Chill out. Chronic stress may